You ever wake up one morning and realize your entire family's legacy is getting mugged by the suburbs like one lone farmhouse swallowed by a tidal wave of 135 identical McMansions? That's me, Ezra Blackwood, fourth generation rancher now living smack dab in the middle of what used to be my own pasture, watching a woman in designer heels try to evict me from land my great-granddad homesteaded back in 1889. No, really, she showed up in a spotless white Tesla, got those heels good and stuck in farm mud, and waved an eviction notice at me like I was some squatter camping on my own dirt. That squelch when her foot sank. That was the sound of karma, and honestly, it was the highlight of my week. Let me back up a sec, because I know what you're thinking. How in the world does that even happen? I'll tell you. My story isn't just about some property lines or a bitter old rancher refusing to change. It's about what happens when greed, stupidity, and HOA nonsense collide with 4 generations of blood, sweat, and honest work. And believe me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. I grew up on 847 acres of heaven, cold, clear water from underground springs, fence posts, weathered by a century of Montana winters, and a massive oak tree planted by my great-grandfather Tobias Blackwood, who believed if you worked hard and played fair, the land would take care of you. My wife Sarah used to say that spring water could cure everything except a broken heart. She was a scientist, a real one, PhD, and all who knew more about this valley's flood patterns and wild critters than the county ever did lost her to cancer 18 months ago. Yeah, that's a wound. $127,000 in hospital bills won't heal. Our daughter Emma calls from Seattle every Sunday begging me to sell and move out closer to her. But this land, it's not just grass and dirt. It's everything my family ever built, and I'm not about to give it up just because the city wants to turn it into a gated suburb. The trouble started 2 years ago when the neighbor old Jim Johnson kicked the bucket. His kids couldn't wait to cash out, sold 640 acres next door to Pinnacle Development for $3.2 million. Within a month, I had slick corporate types at my kitchen table offering $2.1 million for my land. I said no. They weren't used to hearing no. That's when the real fun began. 3 months later, their surveyor accidentally moved the property line 200 feet onto my pasture. By the time I caught on, construction crews were breaking ground. Ashcraft Estates, 135 luxury homes, starting at $485,000 each. And here's the kicker: they put their community center playground and main entrance right smack on my land, piped in water from my spring, and never paid me a dime. I'll admit that takes some guts. But the real slap came driving up my driveway in a Tesla with Blessed One on the plates. That's how I met Veronica Ashcraft, ex-corporate lawyer, HOA dictator, and wife of a city councilman. This woman's the reason Karen jokes exist. First time I see her, I'm fixing fence where their trucks tore through. She steps around mud like she's allergic, shoves a stack of HOA bylaws in my hand. Bylaws I never agreed to, and says, "Mr. Blackwood, this development requires aesthetic consistency. Your rustic approach doesn't align with our community standards." I looked at her standing there on 134 years of Blackwood land and said, "Ma'am, my family's been setting the standard since before your development was a twinkle in anybody's eye. Even my rooster Edgar got in on it, started pecking her designer bag like it had insulted his ancestry." That night, sitting on the porch where Sarah and I dreamed up our future, I realized this wasn't about land anymore. It was war. Next morning, my mailbox explodes. 47 violation notices. Livestock odor, unsightly barns, even fence height being a threat to community cohesion. Sarah would have laughed till she cried. The county inspector showed up with a tape measure, and Edgar, trailing along, pecking his clipboard every time he got too close to the fence. Every violation was a $500 daily fine. Do the math at that rate, bankruptcy would get to me before Christmas. So I called Marcus Webb, ex-Marine property attorney, the kind of guy who looks like he could bench press a tractor. He spread survey maps across my kitchen like a general going to war. Ezra, they didn't just screw up. They committed federal crimes. No environmental studies, no wetland permits, and they're stealing your water. Plus prescriptive easement. You've worked that strip for over a century. That's legal ownership. Sometimes stubbornness really does beat paperwork. Here's where it gets good. We did a survey with ground-penetrating radar, found my granddad's old concrete boundary markers right under Veronica's new community center. Their whole headquarters was on my land. Within hours, Marcus filed an injunction shutting down HOA activities on my property. But Veronica hit back, got my barn condemned, forced me to evacuate my cattle, and threatened me with criminal charges if I didn't comply. My counterpunch, Marcus and I filed a federal lawsuit, civil rights violations, water theft conspiracy. We demanded a federal seizure of all HOA financials. Suddenly, Veronica's emergency barn inspection looked a lot less clever. Harassment kicked up a notch mailbox full of graffiti, sell out and move on notes, anonymous calls to animal control about my dangerous livestock. Somebody cut my fence, killed a calf. That's when I knew this was more than just paperwork. These people wanted me gone no matter what. One night as rain pattered on the roof and the lights from 135 illegal homes glowed through the storm, Emma called. Dad, maybe it's time to cut your losses. I told her I'm not just fighting for land anymore. I'm fighting to prove that people like us can still win. She said, then win, but don't do it alone. 3 days after the lawsuit, Veronica packed the clubhouse for an emergency HOA meeting on my stolen land, no less. She put up slides, my cattle as disease vectors, my barn as a structural hazard, Edgar as a wildlife attractant. She claimed my existence was costing each homeowner $72,000 in lost equity. If you're laughing, you're not alone. She pushed a petition to rezone my ranch and take it by eminent domain. But Marcus and I crashed the meeting with Sarah's original watershed research and a stack of federal docs that would turn her world upside down. Turns out Pinnacle Development took millions in conservation grants money supposed to protect farmland and used it to build these homes. They covered up Sarah's research showing the entire place was a floodplain. That crowd went from angry mob to nervous sheep real quick. Are you telling us we've been harassing the guy whose dam kept our basements dry for 60 years? Asked Helen Morse, retired science teacher. We're in a flood zone, aren't we? Said Bob, the grizzled engineer. Amy Chen started pulling up maps on her phone, calculating how long they'd have before water reached their homes. After that, neighbors stopped pretending not to know me. Helen, Jack the Army vet, and Amy, all victims of Veronica's HOA tyranny, quietly offered to help. That's when Veronica decided to dig up my financial records. Somehow she found out about Sarah's medical debt and filed mechanics liens claiming I owed her $89,000 for improvements her crews made to my land. It's like a burglar billing you for fixing your door after he breaks in. But Marcus just grinned, said they committed legal suicide. Can't charge you for work you never requested. When Veronica tried every dirty trick, anonymous complaints, fake social media accounts, even trying to get my cattle quarantined, I documented everything, waiting for her to hang herself with her own rope. Then Sarah's research gave me the weapon I needed, a blueprint for exactly how much floodwater would hit the development if my dam, which had quietly managed these springs for decades, ever let the valley return to its natural state. Her notes. If ag use ceases catastrophic flooding within 48 hours during a major storm. Nature doesn't care about your property values, you know what I mean? So as the Weather Service warned of the first big storm in years, I called a meeting. Helen, Jack, Amy, and Marcus showed up in my kitchen, our war council. We went over every page of Sarah's thesis. Amy ran the numbers: 3 feet of water in the development within 72 hours if natural flood patterns resumed. Marcus laid out the legal path. Jack showed me how to run the dam slow, steady. Nothing Hollywood about it, just good old-fashioned water management. Veronica didn't take it lying down. Tried to get me declared mentally unfit. Sent the sheriff and a psychiatrist who left shaking their heads at her, not me. Filed for eminent domain, called me a terrorist, tried to slap me with a restraining order to stop environmental sabotage. But by then, her own board was turning on her. The night the rain started, I stood at my grandfather's dam brass levers, worn smooth by decades of honest hands. No drama, just a controlled release water flowing exactly where it was supposed to go. Within hours, the development was surrounded by standing water. News helicopters circled cameras everywhere. HOA Karen gets environmental justice trending on social media. Sheriff Rodriguez arrived, said no laws broken. Blackwood's just running his own legal water system. Veronica, in ankle-deep water, screamed about property values while the marshals arrested her husband for wire fraud. When the water receded, it left behind the truth: 135 luxury homes built illegally on a floodplain, the HOA dissolved, and the valley slowly healing. Sarah's research became law, the Blackwood Doctrine protecting ag water rights across 12 states. Funny, right? The woman who tried to evict me ended up in federal prison. The HOA got replaced by a conservation district, and the whole valley turned into a living classroom for sustainable land management. My daughter moved home, we started the Sarah Blackwood Memorial Preserve, and for the first time in years, I could sleep through the night. So if you're ever facing down a bully with a clipboard, remember nature always has the last word. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step aside and let her speak. Now tell me, if this was your legacy, would you have fought back, or would you have sold out? Drop your HOA horror stories in the comments, hit that subscribe button. If you love watching karma work overtime, and don't forget, justice might take its time, but man, when it shows up, it sure knows how to make an entrance.